Hey everybody, and welcome to a super spooky Everything Elvis. I'm Holly.
And I'm Heather.
And today, you all, I hope you love Halloween as much as we do. I hope you love spooky stories, ghost stories. We have got some doozies today. I have been researching tons of stuff about Elvis sightings, ghost stories, hauntings, happenstance. So stay tuned. Everybody, go grab a cup of hot cocoa, get your coffee. We're here by our fireplace because I thought that would be so appropriate.
I know it actually looks really dark on the Facebook, but I'm like, ooh, that makes it eerier.
I know.
Is eerier a word?
I don't think so.
More eerie? It makes it more eerie.
Yeah, so the great thing about, there's so many stories out there about Elvis' spirit, his ghost, hauntings, everything from Memphis to Vegas. I'm sure there's some from California and Palm Springs, but I'm going to mainly focus on quite a few I heard that happened around Memphis and Graceland, and then quite a few that happened in Las Vegas. And the really interesting thing, these ghost stories and sightings and spirits started literally from the day Elvis died, and they continue on, brand new ones, continue on to this year, 2023. So it's crazy. So the first one I was going to tell you guys is in the 70s, one of the farms that was next to Graceland was owned by a farmer named Claude Buchanan. So Elvis had visited the farm a few times because they were neighbors, but they weren't, really good friends. He had just been there a time or two. So one day, while Claude was out tending to his animals, he looked down the hill and he saw Elvis walking up the hill. And it kind of confused him for a minute because normally he said Elvis drove up, and he could always hear his car coming. So or any kind of car coming. But he was like, I just thought it was odd that I just kind of looked up and Elvis was walking up the driveway. So I called down to him, and Elvis said, hey, I've come to say goodbye for a while, Claude. And he said, just as I was about to respond, because I thought, well, that's a really odd thing. Is he going on an extended tour, or is he moving? He said, just as he was talking with Elvis, he looked behind him because his wife came out the front door, and he said that she came out and yelled to him that they had just announced Elvis had passed away that day. So he kind of was shocked, and then he looked right back over down the hill. Elvis was gone. And it said that this really bothered him, and that he didn't sleep for several nights after that because he was so confused of why Elvis came to visit him, because he said they weren't particularly close friends. They weren't, Elvis had only been a few times, and he's like, so why is Elvis coming to tell me goodbye, or that he's not going to see me for a while? He just thought that was so odd, and he said it just really bothered him for days and weeks afterwards. But I got to thinking about it, and I was like, we don't know. No one ever knows. What if when Elvis died, literally his spirit just went out to everyone he'd ever known or met or had some sort of little connection with to tell him bye, but only certain people kind of are receptive. Yeah, or maybe it happened and they didn't get it, or they didn't notice it, or what. But I just thought that was super interesting. And that literally happened the day Elvis died.
And you said this farm was where?
It didn't say exactly where. It just said that they were neighbors. And
so it was near Graceland. It
was like an adjoining farm. I think Graceland kind of was farmland back in the day.
I mean, we all know that Elvis, his love was Graceland.
Yeah.
And that... you still feel his presence and his spirit all around that house. Yeah. Not only because it is like a time capsule and they've left it exactly as it was when he left this earth, but, you definitely feel his spirit and everything there. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that after he passed, he probably, just kind of went all over Graceland and Memphis and that area and everything, and... Yeah, that was his happy place.
So and that's just a really interesting thing too. A lot of people, there's not a lot of ghost sightings of Elvis, like somebody seeing an apparition, but there are countless stories and feelings from people, all the way from Priscilla to the neighbor guy, that just feel his presence. And even Heather and I say, everybody says that. As soon as you walk in Graceland, you kind of feel his presence. Yeah. Even Angie Marchese said, I remember watching a story that she had where she said when she walks into Graceland, there's such an overwhelming feeling of Elvis's presence that every morning when she comes in to unlock it, she walks in and says, "Good morning, Elvis." And every night when she locks it up, she says, "Good night, Elvis." So it's really interesting. And y'all, there's even something weird with this video. So a couple people are saying it keeps freezing. I'm not sure, but it's been doing like kind of some spooky, weird things. So bear with us. You just never know. Hopefully it'll get back on track. So that was one of the very first sightings of Elvis. Well, then flash forward to the 80s. And throughout the 80s, there was just numerous accounts. And one in particular was 1988. And there was a tour group. This was when they had opened Graceland to tours. A tour group's going through the house and all that. And at the end of the tour, and the tour guide would, you know how when you take the tour at Graceland, the tour guide kind of takes you around, but then they let you kind of freely walk around and explore things. And then you meet them back at the end of the tour. So in 88, there was this tour group, and the tour guide was just standing there waiting on everybody. And all of a sudden, everybody starts coming back and just starts thanking her for the great Elvis impersonator. And they were like, "Wow, where did you find this guy? He was amazing. Like, he's been over there talking to us, and just, he's so in character. He was asking us while we were at his home, and he was singing a little bit." And the tour guide's looking confused, and they're like, "Didn't you have a Elvis impersonator on property?" And the tour guide's like, "No, we don't have that here." She's like, "This is just a tour." She's like, "There's no one dressed," because they're literally, he's dressed as Elvis. He's got the hair, the sideburns, everything. And she's like, "We don't have that here." So then she got worried because they were like, "Well, maybe just some kind of kook has, busted in here and is trying to act like he's Elvis." So they searched the entire grounds, the house, everywhere the people said that this person was. No one was on property. There was no impersonator hired. They never found anyone. And all these people swear now they think it was Elvis because they said it looked just like him. It sounded like him. He was so cordial and was like, "Oh, what are you guys doing in my home?" And da-da-da, and just singing and joking. And so they, to this day, and this was several people. This wasn't just one person. Like the tour guide said, like, you know how you trickle in? They kept coming over and going, "Man, that guy was great." And some people were like, "I know, wasn't he so good? Didn't he look just like Elvis?" And like, she said she just started getting worried. And she was like, yeah.
Was it just like that one tour?
Well, they say that happened all throughout the 80s. For some reason, the 80s were big on this whole tour group thing. That's just the most popular because it was a full group of people. Yeah. Like, they say throughout the years, it'll be like maybe one person going like, "Hey, did you guys was that really, what impersonator was that in the jungle room," or whatever, and then, but this was just a mass account of more than one person, like an entire tour group saw this apparition, I guess, or this spirit.
Although, if people can come back, their apparitions or spirits or whatever, it would not surprise me with Elvis, because we all know what a prankster and a jokester he was, and that he, loved to get people and everything. So that would not surprise me if he wasn't like, "I'm going to make an appearance and see if I can spook some people."
Yeah, and not only has his spirit been seen at Graceland, but other places around Memphis as well. And
probably that Memphian theater.
Probably.
He probably just sits there and watches movies late at night.
I'll have to research that. I didn't find anything on that. But everyone knows that Elvis grew up in Lauderdale Courts in Memphis. Well, there are still Lauderdale Courts to this day. It's just in the, I think, late 80s to early 90s, they renovated it, and it was renamed Uptown Suites, or Uptown Square, pardon me. So I don't know if it's went back to Lauderdale Courts now, but it went from Lauderdale Courts to Uptown Suites, and they rented out, they refurbished it, they redid the whole building, and it was said in 1995, a lady named Annette Neal was living in the apartment that was originally Elvis and Gladys and Vernon's apartment that they lived there, and she swore up and down that that apartment was haunted by the spirit of Elvis, that she frequently would see Elvis, things would happen, things would be moved, it was cold, there'd be a cold spell, and she just always felt the presence of Elvis. So that was even in the 90s. So you know, he might visit his childhood home. Who knows? Then in 2000, and it was right before she died, one of Elvis's cooks, Mary Jenkins Langston, she said that she had been haunted by Elvis since his death. So she was a longtime cook of his from the late 60s on up until his death, and then even continued on for a while after he died because they still needed her services at Graceland. But some of you may not know, I didn't know, Elvis bought her a home in Memphis that she lived at until her death, and she said on her deathbed that her house was haunted by Elvis as well. And the funny thing is, though, she said it was the bathroom. She said for as long as she had lived there, from the time Elvis died, she would always get a weird occurrence in the bathroom. Like she would be in there putting on her makeup, whatever, and in the mirror behind her, she would see Elvis. She said, or there'd be loud knocks or loud noises. She said so many times she'd been in the bathroom alone, like no one else there. She was in the bathroom, and there'd be knocks on her bathroom door while she was in there, and she would kind of jump and then look out, and no one's there. And so she attributes all of that to Elvis, which I'm like, you know, Elvis is such, like you say, he's such a prankster. Because she also said too, anytime that she would take a break, whether she was at her house or Graceland, where she was taking a break from cooking or cleaning or whatever, she said if she would nap, she always awoke to, it felt like someone pulling at her toes. Pulling her toe, like wiggling her toes or like pulling her toes, like to kind of wake her up. And she always thought it was Elvis. And she was like, well, I guess it's time for me to get back to work. Elvis is telling me nap time's over. So I thought that was really sweet. Yeah. So just, you know, some fun facts all throughout. And like I say, there are a ton more all throughout Graceland and Memphis, but some of my favorites have actually come from Las Vegas. And these stem, I've got 2 or 3 stories from Vegas, and they stem all the way from right after Elvis died on up to this past year. So it's really interesting. Which one am I going to start with? Because I've got 2 or 3 good ones.
Can I just do my one about Graceland?
Oh, yes.
Before about Graceland?
Yes, but I meant to throw it to you, and I just got too involved.
Yeah. I'm not as good of a spooky storyteller as Holly is. But, yeah, so this was like one of my favorites because we all know, you know, Elvis had stepbrothers when Vernon remarried Dee Stanley after Gladys died. And so one of his stepbrothers, Billy Stanley, he's very active on Facebook, and he always posts like a lot of different, you know, stories that he remembers fondly of Elvis and everything. And usually around Halloween, I don't know if he did it this year or not, but usually around Halloween, he always posts this like kind of spooky, eerie story that happened to him. So apparently he says one time when he was at Graceland, and it was him and Vernon, because Elvis was gone filming a movie. And so nobody was like upstairs, because I feel like most people, you know, like it was just Elvis, and like, you know, when Lisa was there, it was them like staying upstairs, but otherwise the upstairs kind of just nobody ever was up there. But anyway, him and Vernon were like downstairs, they were watching TV one night, and he said that all of a sudden he started hearing things like upstairs, and he was like, that's weird. And he was like, because he was like, Elvis isn't home, and he didn't come back home, and he wouldn't come home and not tell us. And he said, so he looks at Vernon and he's like, Vernon, did you hear something? And he said, Vernon's like, no. And he was like, you didn't hear like anything upstairs? And he's like, no. And so he was like, we go back to watching TV. And he's like, so I hear it again. And it sounds like footsteps. It sounds like somebody walking, or, you know, somebody moving things upstairs. And he said, I look at Vernon and I'm like, Vernon, you don't hear that? And he's like, you don't hear anything? And he's like, no, be quiet and watch the TV. And he said, so I'm just like sitting there like, I can't believe, you know, he doesn't hear this because I keep hearing it. And he's like, so again, I say something to Vernon, and he's like, and finally he like gets mad, and he's like, stop, there's nothing, you know, I don't know what you're hearing, but get over it. So he's like, I just kind of dropped it and went on. So he's like, Elvis finishes his movie and comes back, you know, like weeks later or whatever. And when Elvis comes back, he said, I was like, wanted to like tell Elvis about this, you know, because it like had still stuck with me and bothered me. So he said, I was just like, hey Elvis, he was like, the weirdest thing happened the other night. And he was like, told him, he was like, you know, Vernon and I are watching TV, and he's like, I keep hearing all these sounds coming from like upstairs, and it sounds like somebody walking and footsteps, and nobody was in the house. You were gone and everybody was gone except for us. And he said, Elvis just kind of laughed and grinned, and he goes, oh, that's Mom. And he goes, that's my mom. And he goes, yeah, she walks around upstairs. Like, she's upstairs.
Ooh.
And because like apparently in the attic and stuff, Elvis, like after Gladys died, he kept like army trunks and things in the attic, and he had a lot of Gladys's like dresses and clothes and things up there. And like one time, you know, Billy says that he took him and like his brothers and stuff up there and kind of like showed him some things. And yeah, he said that Elvis was just like, yeah, that's just mom. It's nothing to be scared of. It's nothing to worry about. You know, it's just mom. And so then, you know, Billy said then, of course, after Elvis died, he said every time I would go in Graceland, I'd listen because I'd say, now I bet I hear 2 sets of footsteps. And now that Lisa Marie has passed, will we hear 3 sets of footsteps walking in Graceland?
That is such a believable one, because if Gladys is going to stay anywhere, her spirit would be at Graceland watching over Elvis and Vernon. Like a lot of people, you know, they'll always say, like paranormal investigators will always be like, oh, if you leave people's items, which a lot of her items are still, her whole room, there's still her clothes in the closet in her bedroom downstairs. Plus there's all those, I'm sure, that used to be up in the attic. So what a perfect place for her to enjoy herself, her afterlife, and be there doing the thing she enjoyed most, which was taking care of Elvis and watching over him. So interesting. I love it. Ooh, I'm spooked out now, y'all. I've got goosebumps. So, all right, so I've got a few great ones here from Las Vegas, which we all know, probably second to Memphis and maybe Hawaii. Elvis adored Las Vegas. He lived in Las Vegas for an extended amount of time. He probably did the majority of his shows and concerts in Las Vegas. So you have to know that that's going to be a great
place that you
place
might,
for
like,
his spirit
see
to
or hear sightings or get good stories from.
Yes. So starting back in the early 70s, so that we're going to do a story from the 70s, one that's kind of been throughout the decades, and then I'll end it with one here in 2022. We all know this is probably the most famous Elvis ghost story, and it is by Mr. Wayne Newton, who is a wonderful entertainer and was a close friend of Elvis's. I don't know if you all ever watch, but if there's a ghost story or a haunting show on, this one right here is watching it. So one of my favorite shows used to be Celebrity Hauntings, where they would come out and tell ghost stories, and it was always a celebrity telling a ghost story. Well, back in 2012, and this was the first time I had ever heard it, so I don't know if he had told it before then, but Wayne Newton was on the show, and he was telling this story, and it's such a beautiful story, and I've got updates and everything, so it's a really intricate one. But so Elvis's last set of concerts was in 1976 at the International. Which, and let me clarify, so it started as the International Hotel, then it became the Hilton Hotel. It had a blip, it's like a strange name, I can't remember, and now it is the Westgate Hotel. So back when it was the International, Wayne was in Vegas performing at a different hotel, and you know, he was at the height of his career as well. And he said 2 to 3 months after Elvis's passing, the International called Wayne and said, we would love for you to take over the residency that Elvis had here since he's passed. And Wayne said, you know, it really bothered him at first, and he was just kind of like, I don't know. I don't know if I, you know, that's big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
He said, plus that was my friend. I just don't know if I want to do that. But he said he talked with his family and his manager, and they were like, you know, Wayne, if anybody should take over this residency, it should be you, because you and Elvis were such close friends, and you're both so tied to Vegas. So he's like, you know, I thought about it, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to use this as a way to honor Elvis. So when he was doing getting ready for the show and putting it together, he decided to put together an Elvis medley to honor Elvis and talk a little bit about their friendship and all that. So he said, flash forward, he started the shows. He was doing shows every night. He was putting in the Elvis medley. And he said one night, the hotel management came and gave him a note saying, hey, there's not going to be anybody in the balcony tonight because we've closed it off. And a lot of times, you know, if they don't sell tickets, or if they have like something, you know, there needs to be maintenance done or whatever, they'll close part of the theater off. And they always tell the entertainer that so that he won't acknowledge, you know, because it would be silly if there's no one in the balcony for Wayne to be like, up in the balcony, hey, or, you know, blah, blah. So he's like, so they always give notes to the entertainers to say this particular section will be blocked off this night. So he's like, I was going about the show. I was not acknowledging the balcony because there's no one up there. And he said all of a sudden when he started to talk about Elvis and talk about the medley, he talks about the medley and he kicks it off. And he said as soon as the music started, he starts singing his first lyrics, all of a sudden every light in the theater goes out except for one. There's one, and it's the spotlight that was on Wayne. So he said, I'm like, okay, technical difficulties, these things happen. But he said it was just odd because he's like, normally lights will all go off and then come back on, or you'll have a few. But he said this was literally every light in the theater except the spotlight on him. He said then he's like, I'm just going to continue on. They'll get it fixed. All of a sudden, all of the sound goes out. All of the monitors go out. And he's like, the band's kind of like, oh, but he's like, they keep playing, I keep singing, because he's like, hopefully this is just like a fluky thing and we'll get all this done. So he's like, I'm kind of looking around at like my band leader and all this. And he said, for some reason, I looked up at the balcony. And he said, as I looked, I see a silhouette of a man. And he said he was backlit because there was just that one spotlight. And he said, so I'm looking at it and thinking, this is really odd because they told me no one should be up in the balcony. Mm-hmm. And he said, as my eyes adjust and I'm looking more and more, he's like, it was Elvis. He said, I saw him plain as day. And he was standing there looking at me and smiling. And he said, so he's like, it was almost as if the world stood still. And he's like, I don't know how long I was looking up there or looking at him. But he said, I just kind of blocked out the light issue. I blocked out the band. And he said, for 1 minute, it just seemed like it was me and Elvis alone in this room, silence, just staring at each other. And he said, but I kind of got a good feeling because he said, Elvis smiled and kind of nodded and winked at me. And I took that as, Elvis is happy.
You're doing a good job.
You're doing a good job.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he said, then, just all of a sudden, he snaps out of it. Elvis disappears. The lights all come on. The monitors come on. Sound is back. And he said, I just was kind of thinking he's like, I just had to compartmentalize that and be like, okay, I will deal with this later. I've got my show to do. He said, so I finished the show. And he said, so I'm backstage in the dressing room, which was Elvis's dressing room. He said, I'm back there and my drummer walks in and was like, man, wasn't that a weird thing, about the lights and, all that? And Wayne was like, yeah. And the guy was like, and dude, who was that guy up on the balcony? I thought we closed it today. So Wayne was like, did you see something? And the drummer was like, yes. So Wayne was like, okay, that at least made me feel like, well, I'm not crazy. Because he's like, I was literally doubting my sanity at this point.
Yeah.
And he said, so years passed, from what I hear, after he told this story, but it always just kind of haunted him and bothered him. So flash forward a few years after that, they had another show that he was on, and it was called The Haunting Of. So it would be like The Haunting Of Wayne Newton, The Haunting Of, an insert celebrity name. Mm-hmm. And it was Kim Russo, which I don't know if you guys know her, but she's like a very famous psychic medium. She kind of can channel spirits and all that. She actually used to have her own show. I think it was like on a Lifetime or maybe TLC or something like that. But anyway, she was doing this show. So Wayne contacted her and was like, I just feel like I have some unresolved issues and with this whole ghost story and stuff. And so it was really interesting. She tries not to get much information out of people. So they come to the International. And Kim's like, just take me through everywhere that you used to be, because this was your place. So take me to your dressing room, take me to where you live, take me. So he took her to the penthouse suite, that's where all the artists and residencies stay. They basically live there while they're, there for a few months. Mm-hmm. So they go up to the penthouse, and the weird thing was she starts getting with mediums and stuff, they'll start being like, okay, I kind of feel this presence. And, they're trying to figure out if that mm-hmm. spirit is just some rando spirit from Las Vegas, or if it's something connected to Wayne.
Yeah.
She found a lot that were connected to Wayne, but I'll only tell you about a couple of them. One was Colonel Tom Parker. She was like, I keep seeing this kind of robust man that's very pushy, and he's wearing a hat, and he just will not leave me alone. And Wayne was like, I know exactly who it is. And she said, well, he wants me to tell you two things. He wants me to tell you that he regrets a lot of things he did in his life, but that he wanted you to know that he forgives you for something that you feel bad about. And she's like, so what is that? Wayne's like, well, I know the regrets he has are probably his management style with Elvis.
Yeah.
And others. He said, but what I have always felt guilty about is Wayne was supposed to do the eulogy at Colonel Tom Parker's funeral. And he said, I had written it out. I was going to fly out to go give it at his funeral. And he said, but I got snowed in Chicago, because I was in Chicago doing some shows. There was a horrific snowstorm. My plane couldn't fly, so I missed the funeral. And he's like, I never got to give the eulogy, and I've always felt horrible about it. Wow. And she said, well, Colonel wants to tell you that he forgives you, that, no problem. So I was like, oh, that's so great. So then they go down to the dressing room area. And so then she's like, I feel a presence. And so she's like, I feel like you had a good friend that was also a singer, and that you guys really bonded. And she's like, he's here with me, and he wants me to tell you that he's so happy that you changed the course of your life. He's so happy that you took his advice. And she's like, do you know who that could be? She's like, he's saying that you guys always had a lot of great talks, and you were very, very close, and you advised each other. And Wayne was like, I know exactly who it is. He's like, it's Elvis Presley. And Kim's like, what? And he's like, yes. And she's like, well, what can you tell me about this advice? She's like, he's saying that there was one instance in particular where he gave you a lot of advice, or gave you one particular piece of advice, and you took it to heart and you changed your life. And he's like, I know exactly what you're talking about. He said, so Elvis and I would often come over to each other's dressing rooms in between shows or whatever and talk. And he said, one night I distinctly remember, he said it was 1976, shortly before his death. He said, I came into his dressing room, and he said, we just got to talking about life and loves and just everything. And he said, we literally had a 3-hour conversation. And he said, I missed my second show that night. And he said, it was the one and only time I ever missed a second show in my entire career that spanned decades.
Yeah.
So he said, in that night, he's like, I distinctly remember it. Elvis was just really down that night. And he was just talking about how things hadn't worked out with he and Priscilla, and that had caused him to not to get to see Lisa Marie as much as he wanted, and that he knew Wayne had just had a baby daughter, because Wayne had literally just had a baby daughter that was a few months old. And he said, Wayne, I don't want you to make the mistakes I do. He's like, you are working too hard. He said, you're working too much, you're working too hard, and you need to scale it back and spend time with your daughter, because I wish now I had done that with my daughter. And so Wayne was like, okay, well, I will. And he said, so I got to thinking about it. And he said, a few days later, I went home. He's like, to his then wife, it's now his ex-wife, but the mother of his daughter. And he said, but I was living in Las Vegas because that's where I was, doing my shows, and I was touring a lot. So I was never home hardly at all. And he said, but I made a point to go home and spend some time with my daughter. And he's like, we played and we did all these things together and watched TV. And he said, at the end of the night, I was like, well, honey, I've got to go. And she said, Daddy, will you wait for me at the front door? And he said, yeah, okay. He's like, little kids. He said, all of a sudden she comes down with a suitcase. And she's like, Daddy, I want to go with you. And he said, her mom was like, honey, don't you want to stay with me? And she was like, no. She's like, I want to go with Daddy. And he said, I took her with me that night. And he's like, and shortly after that, my wife and I got divorced. And he's like, I was a single parent. And he said, and I kept my daughter with me. All those, basically I raised her as a single parent. And he's like, we were super close. And he's like, I always thought of Elvis and thanked him, because he's like, I had this super close relationship with my daughter. And he said, if I hadn't have went home that night, she probably never would have come with me, and I wouldn't have this special relationship I did. So she said, well, Elvis just wanted to make sure, because all this time Wayne had thought Elvis was just giving him the nod of like, awesome, man, you're taking over my residency, you're doing a great job. But what it was, she said, Elvis wants to know, did you see his wink? He winked at you. And Wayne was like, yeah, he kind of nodded and winked, and I just thought he was saying good job. She said, no, he was winking because he was so proud of you for taking his advice.
Wow.
That's so creepy. And Wayne to this day says he always feels Elvis's presence, which it's so interesting with the international. They say every star that has done a residency since Elvis has always said they always feel his presence on the side of the stage before they go on and in the dressing room.
Well, I mean, like we said, we all know that Elvis loved Graceland. And so we know his heart and his spirit is there. But Elvis also loved the stage.
Yes.
He also loved performing. He loved making people happy with his music and his songs and his performances. And so, yes, that's where else his spirit and everything would live and would be.
Yeah, and so then another cool story that several people have had in Las Vegas. This has been going on for decades. So everyone says, so the International, within the Hilton, now it's the Westgate, but they have made modifications. They have put up some brick walls around it and things, and all sorts of people, from just tourists to locals to business owners to whoever, say that multiple times they have seen Elvis in a red Cadillac driving, and he drives to the brick wall and then goes through it. And you know why it's at that particular spot is because when Elvis was alive, before that brick wall was built, that was his private driveway into the International. So I thought about it. How many times did Elvis probably through the years drive into that private driveway into the International? And, you know, I was listening to some YouTubers and like paranormal experts and investigators and all that, and they say there's something that they call a residual footprint. And what that means is it's residual energy from when someone dies that it kind of something that was so special to them, it leaves like not their spirit, but just their energy, and it repeats itself over and over again. So it's not their spirits like staying there, it's just that the energy they imprinted there, and they don't even know it, that just repeats over and over. And you know, Elvis thousands of times had to have drove into that driveway, so that probably did make an imprint. But yeah, which now I'm like, I want to go to Vegas and stand outside that brick wall building and see if I can see Elvis's. Like, how creepy would it be if you're kind of like, oh, wow, there's probably an Elvis impersonator in a red Cadillac, you know, driving wherever, and then like, boom, it goes straight through the wall. I would lose it. I would lose it. Yeah, so I thought that was a good one. And then last but not least, this is a really good story that I just found, and it's so recent. So the Westgate now really pays a great tribute and honor to Elvis. They have like a giant statue of Elvis in their lobby. They have redone the dressing room where Elvis was, but they have kept the bar that was there when Elvis was there and a mirror behind the bar. So even though it's been renovated and redone, there are still things that were there when Elvis was there. And then the penthouse suite that Elvis spent all of his time in, it's now called the Tuscany. And it is this gorgeous, like I was looking at the tour, you'll have to go on YouTube and look at it, this gorgeous penthouse suite. It's got like 5 bedrooms. It has like a master bedroom plus 4 bedrooms and like this huge living area and all that. So they were filming last year, kind of like a film company was filming like a little video for the Westgate to kind of advertise the whole Elvis thing and the penthouse suite and the dressing room and their shows and all that. And the film crew decided to make a YouTube video about it because of all the strange occurrences. So they went there, and I believe it was like the general manager was going to just take you on a tour. And it does. It shows the video, and he's like, okay, now we're at the dressing room of the Westgate. And here, you know, so-and-so and so-and-so have performed here, and we've renovated. And, like, he's just going through this whole big spiel. Well, the film crew just said that it was so difficult for them to film, that if it went wrong, if it could go wrong, it went wrong. And so they were saying that during production, they toured the dressing room, his penthouse suite, and the theater. But the undertaking was so strange because they said things kept happening. Like, so they went up one time to film the penthouse. They get there, the general manager has his keys to let them in, but the door was locked. Well, had been locked from the inside. The deadbolt had been locked.
Ooh.
And only the deadbolt can be locked only from the inside. So they were like, well, I guess is somebody in here? So like they were like, we're knocking, no one's coming to the door, we can't get in, we don't know what to do. They finally have to call the engineering team, and they have to take the door off to get it unlocked and stuff. And they were just like, well, I guess Elvis doesn't want us in the penthouse suite. But I mean, how weird is that it's not only locked, but it's deadbolted, that can only be done from the inside. And they were like, there was no one in there. Like, we literally had to get the door out. Yeah, then they said, when they were going, and this is what I thought was super weird. I've got it written down here. Hold on. Oh yeah. So then when they finally got into the penthouse, and it has a private pool that's like up, because the penthouse is on this huge floor. There's a private pool that leads out from it. Well, they're going through the penthouse, and they said all of a sudden they had to quit filming because the battery, every time they would step in there, the battery to their camera would drain. So they literally put in 2 to 3 batteries. So that kept happening. Then a weird chirping sound kept happening in the audio. So they kept having to refilm it because they were like, do you hear that chirping? Like, what is that? Then they said a huge storm, which Vegas doesn't get many like thunderstorms. They said a huge thunder and lightning storm was so severe they had to quit filming. Then when they finally were filming it, they finally got through it. And this literally took 3 to 4 separate attempts of them having to keep coming back. They went outside to where the private pool was. This huge, heavy chair. Like, it couldn't have been moved by a storm. It was like those big metal, really nice chairs. It had been thrown into the pool, and it was just floating in the pool. And they were like, this has never happened. That's bizarre. Yeah. So then when they got down to the dressing room and the stage, everything once again kept happening. Like, everything was fine if they were in the casino, if they were in the lobby, but as soon as they hit the dressing room, it just kept going on. Like, and he said too that you could almost feel Elvis's presence in the dressing room. Like, every time they stepped in there, and the GM, confirmed, he's like, every artist we've ever had here always says they feel Elvis's presence. They always feel his presence in the dressing room and stuff. So I just thought that was super weird. And like I say, this was literally in 2022. They, because they're evidently doing like a little series on the Westgate and just showing you different things. Like, yeah, here's this penthouse, here's this. But anytime they had to do anything with Elvis, they're thinking about turning it into like just a ghost story. Oh, yeah. Because they said anytime anything goes wrong, to this day, the staff will always be like, well, it's the ghost of Elvis. So they still to this day believe that Elvis, anything that goes bad, that he causes everything. Yeah, they said anything in the whole hotel always blames him. So I just thought that was super weird that's so current. And just so unexplainable. Like, it's just so weird, all those interesting things.
But now I want to go to, like, the Westgate. And because I'm pretty sure that they do, like, tours and things.
Yeah, they
like
do.
Guided tours. And probably some of you all have done it. Let us know if you have.
Yeah.
But, yeah, they literally do tours where I think, like, you can walk that, like, corridor behind where, like, Elvis, like, from his dressing room.
Yes,
he walked to, like, the stage. And then they kind of take you and show you the stage and, like, where he, like, performed and everything. And I so want to do that.
Yeah, because that was an interesting...
Just because it's always cool to walk where Elvis walked and where he was and everything. But, yeah.
Yeah, because they said that when they were doing this, because they always tried it, because they had this really neat thing when you do that tour and you go backstage, they had this little place, they had like a star on the floor, and he said this is the exact place Elvis would stand when he would say his prayers, and like, get himself ready before he walked out, and then he would touch, Elvis was superstitious a little bit. They said he always stood in this one spot and did a prayer and all that, and then he would touch this wall, so they have a handprint. And it was like, you can touch where Elvis touched. And because he would touch this wall as like a good luck thing and then walk out. And they had been doing the tour wrong, they said, for a while, because they were showing you like a really easy route to get that all the stars now take. And they said it was so weird. They just hired a new stage manager. Well, his dad was a stage manager when Elvis was there. And now his son is the stage manager. And he had his dad there, and his dad was like, no, this is not, like the flashlight. You know how it'll always show Elvis walking on stage and there's someone in front of him with just a flashlight to kind of guide you around your way. So he finally was like, no, this is the way that Elvis went. And it's this super really difficult, long way to get to the stage. But I guess that's what Elvis wanted to do back then. Or
I bet it gave him time to like psych himself up.
Yeah,
and
maybe.
stuff, you know. Like I think he probably needed to like build that like energy and that, you know. So I don't know.
So what did you think? Doesn't it make you want to go to the international / Westgate?
Yes, I'm booking a trip tomorrow. Like I want to go now.
I know. I don't know if they let you like maybe tour the penthouse, because I'm like, I guess there's rich people that stay there, or maybe that's where the artist in residency stays in that particular one, because they have several. This one's called the Tuscany, and that is definitely the one that Elvis stayed in.
Yeah,
but and Wayne stayed in. Yeah, so I don't know. But I would love to go to that dressing room.
Yes,
and see that bar and touch it in the mirror and all that.
Yes,
and I would love to do the backstage tour and like touch where Elvis did and like stand where he like stood. Like that's just so cool.
Wow.
So yeah. So what did you guys think? And like I say, y'all, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many. Maybe next year we'll do volume 2. Of so many great Elvis ghost stories. But
I'd like to thank people though on here. They're all like, yeah, your video like keeps going in and out and doing weird things.
Sorry.
And then everybody's like, I think it's Elvis. Maybe Elvis is playing with your video today.
I mean, he might be.
Yeah. And thank all of you for the stars that are sending the stars. We appreciate it. Keep those coming, and maybe we can get to Vegas.
Yes, you could contribute to the Holly and Heather visit the International.
Yes, Holly and Heather visit International Hotel.
Holly and Heather Vegas
experience
vacation.
Elvis, yes.
So, but last but not least, we saved it to last, y'all.
Yeah.
This is a super spooky event. Heather, would you like to tell it?
Or? Sure. Well, yeah, we can tell it together. So, as you all know, Holly and I try to go every year to Elvis Week and every year to Birthday Week in Memphis. Yeah. And so one of the reasons we absolutely love going Birthday Week is because they have all the Christmas lights and decorations still up, just the way Elvis decorated Graceland. And so for those of you that haven't had a chance to go during the holidays, and maybe you haven't even seen pictures, literally it's like amazing, because when Elvis was there, he had like this huge, what do you call the,
wait, Christmas decorations?
Yeah, the thing outside, it just left
the Merry Christmas to all?
Well, he has the Santa Claus with the Merry Christmas, love Elvis.
And he has the cute little trees.
He has the trees.
The nativity set.
Nativity. I was like, I cannot think of the word nativity. I was like, it's on the tip of my tongue. But yeah, it has this huge nativity set with all the like animals and everything. But then one of my favorite parts that I think is so iconic is all the way from the gates leading all the way up the winding driveway in front of Graceland, because it's a pretty long driveway, are these big, huge blue bulbs. And again, all of this is original. Like Elvis purchased all of this stuff when he was alive. He decorated every year this way. And so EPE and Graceland continue those traditions today, and they decorate it just as Elvis did. And my favorite color is blue. And like I said, Graceland at night is beautiful anyway, but Graceland in holiday lights at night is even more beautiful. And so when you see these blue lights lining the driveway, it's so great. So fast forward to last birthday celebration. Holly and I went, and then we were supposed to go and do like a tour, a Christmas tour of Graceland at night. And that's also one of our favorite things, and something you should do is tour Graceland at night, because it's a whole difference. Talk about Elvis's spirit and energy. There's a whole different spirit and energy and feeling when you walk into Graceland at nighttime when it's dark. But anyway, it's like super cold. We're waiting outside, and we're waiting on our tour, and we're just like kind of taking pictures and things, and like we start looking around, and I look at Holly and I'm like, why are the driveway lights white? And Holly's like, what? And so we look, almost all the driveway lights are white.
But let me preface. This was one of those rare occasions where we just got to go to Graceland a lot. Like we literally had 2 or 3 times we could tour it, and we did. We took full advantage. We're like, we're just going to go 3 or 4 times. And I think we did probably go 3, if not 4 times. Yeah. But what was so weird about it is every time we went, like the first time I don't think we noticed it. No. Then like the second time we went, there was just a few lights. Yeah. It was like, and we started taking pictures because there would literally be like a white bulb and then like the blue bulb. And it would just be like a few. But then when Heather's saying, probably by that 3rd or 4th time we went, all of the lights were white.
Yes.
And we were like, Heather's complaining, she's like, that's not cool. That's not Graceland. They've got to be blue. And I'm like, that is really weird. And I'm like, is there something going on? Like, is there an event?
We're just trying to figure out like what happened because like Holly said, and then I was like, they wouldn't have changed out all the lights to white.
And it was weird overnight. Well, I was like, how would they have done it overnight? Yeah. That's like an undertaking.
But then we start like looking behind us and there's like some of the lights like right there. And we took pictures of all this and we posted it and Holly will post it again. But like literally it would be like a white light and then the blue light. And, I don't know if any of you all are familiar with like I call them old timey lights because, back in the day, like our grandmothers and stuff and even our mom, like used to Christmas, like bulbs and things were like the really huge and like really saturated colors and stuff. Like you'd have the big green and like they were like glass bulbs and stuff. Yeah. And that's kind of what these are like. And so, back then they didn't make the bulbs like nowadays, you can get bulbs that like will color change. Yeah. Like they'll go from like white to blue to whatever. I don't think these do. No. Like these are blue.
They do not.
Like these are blue. Like it's not like they like or hey, let's flip a switch and turn them all to white tonight or hey, let's flip a switch tomorrow and turn them all to green. Like they are blue. Yeah. But when we saw them, they were all white. Yeah. And then some of them were still blue, but then some of them were still white. And this was on January 7th, which, Elvis's birthday is January 8th, and they always do like a proclamation or whatever. And so anyway, we were like totally like spooked out because we're like, this is
we were like, this is so odd. We were asking other people, and then we all started laughing, kind of like, oh, it's Elvis. He's playing a joke on us. He's playing, Elvis is fooling with the lights.
So we took like pictures and everything. So I was like, we got to document this. I was like, because this is too creepy and this is too weird, and like this has never happened before. Because Holly and I have been to tons of birthday weeks and celebrations and seen the lights and everything, and they've never not been blue. Never not been blue. Yeah. Like I said, if you've been, that's probably one of the things you love and notice the most are those blue lights lining the thing. And so anyway, then we go back the next day, all back blue. All back blue. Like perfectly saturated.
Perfect blue.
Like royal blue, like nothing. And we were like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Yeah. And like nobody really like knew or had an answer. And then the eeriest thing is, we're talking about this past January. This was on January the 7th. Well, Lisa Marie passed on January 12th. And Lisa Marie was at the proclamation and the celebration.
She was at Graceland those days.
She was at Graceland during that time, and she was there for her final time for the birthday proclamation. So now it's even more significant.
Yeah. We're just like, was that a sign? Like, what was that?
Yeah.
So, and draw your own conclusions.
And there's an update.
So fast forward to today, because we were trying to get our dates correct for all of this. So I was asking Heather before we came on. I said, "Hey, wasn't that this past January that the light thing happened?" And Heather's like, "Well, just look back on your Facebook and try to find the date." And I was like looking and I was scrolling and I couldn't find it. Heather's like, "Hold on, let me get my phone and I'll look and see at all my pictures from this past January." Well, she starts flipping through and she's like, "I don't remember this in this picture." So right after that, during that same night, Heather and I were just snapping pictures and we were having people take pictures of she and I in front of Graceland that night. Well, she looks at this picture. She's like, "Heather," or she's like, "Holly, come over here and look at this picture." She's like, "Do you remember this? Do you have it pulled up?"
Well, I was going to show you a couple things.
Okay.
So this is all of the lights white.
Creepy.
So they all were white. So then this is side by side. That's the white one. The other side, that's what they normally look like. That's the blue that they normally look like. There it is up close. That's what it should look like. How does that all turn white? Like you can see that is obviously blue.
It's even the glasses even changed.
Yes, it meant to be blue. But then look, it turns white. But yes,
creepy.
This is, it's like the craziest thing. But then yes, so Holly and I, that same night that all these weird lights, and you can see some of the lights behind us are the white. We took a picture out in front of Graceland and we took numerous.
But look at that.
Okay, look on the side of Holly.
Yeah, look right beside me at that white, I don't know if it's an apparition, but it's like a fog.
Yeah.
And we literally have 2 or 3 pictures that somebody snapped.
This is
it's not there.
That's like right after it. That's like right after it. But that's the only picture. And yeah, it's not,
Isn't that
it couldn't,
bizarre?
yeah, it couldn't be like a smudge on the
like go
photo or the screen.
Yeah, like look at it, like it's right. Look at that right there. Right there. Isn't that spooky? We just noticed it today, and I'm like, did it just appear today? Because I know this one, like I don't notice anything, but she notices every detail about every photo, and she always goes back and looks through her photos.
Yeah.
And she never saw that.
Like, it's not a flash bulb or a flash or whatever, or like something. I don't know.
And then we started laughing because I was like, of course it would be on my side because Elvis probably knows what a scaredy cat I am, and then all he'd have to do is say boo and I would run. This one, you could put a chainsaw up beside her and she would just look at you and stare. So I was like, he knows the one to mess with. So y'all, isn't that creepy? Mm-hmm. I just thought that was so crazy. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is our own personal Elvis ghost story, but thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed all of the ghost stories. We just thought this would be a fun, spooky, slightly different version of our Everything Elvis on Sunday, since it's in honor of Halloween being just a few days away. Hope you enjoyed it. Let us know if you did. If you have your own Elvis ghost story, comment it below. We'd love to know. Tell me which one was your favorite. Tell me, did you know all these? Had you already heard them? Or did you hear anything new? A couple of these were new to me, so it was interesting. Yeah. But we thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back next weekend with tons of news, because hopefully there's going to be more ticket news. And we've had a really exciting weekend that I'm not going to go into, but we'll talk all about it next weekend. Yeah. We just wanted to make sure that we stayed spooky for this one.
Yes. But thank you all. We hope you have a very happy and safe Halloween. Yes. If you're dressing up, send us some pictures. I'd love to see your costumes. I love Halloween costumes.
Yes.
So.
Yes. So we will see you all very, very soon, and stay spooky.